Now I heard
Uh,
recording in progress.
Yeah. All right. So we can start like whenever we want, but I just wanted to record it so I can cut it to the point that we actually start. But whenever you're ready to start the conversation and the podcast show, I'm ready.
I'll defer to you.
All right. All right. Welcome to the Question Man podcast show, everyone. I'm your host, Antonio Maltese, and today we have a very special guest, Mr. Jeff Sherman. And Jeff, actually, I'm gonna throw it back to you for a good 30 seconds to a minute. If you could just give us a little resume elevator pitch of Horizon, Amgen, of what you do, what your passions are, what got you into the field that you're in.
Sure. So a little bit about my background. Jeff Sherman, as Antonio mentioned, I'm a trained as a physician, completed an internal medicine residency, chief medical residency at Northwestern University in Chicago, and infectious diseases fellowship at the University of California, San Francisco. Was a research associate at the Howard Hughes Medical Institute there in allergy immunology with his focus on inflammatory mediators.
Wow.
Joined industry first at Squibb, Bristol Myers Squibb, in a clinical pharmacology translational medicine role. Moved into clinical research, and then from there joined Searle, which became Pharmacia, which is now part of Pfizer.
Oh, wow.
Um, was at a small biotech in the Chicago area, Neopharm, transitioned to Takeda, and then small company IDM Pharma that had been based on the West Coast. Got a product approved for osteosarcoma, pediatric bone cancer. Wound up selling that company to Takeda Millennium, and then came along with the Horizon CEO, Tim Walber, who is at IDM as well, to what was then Horizon. Small company, give you an understanding of how small Horizon was at the beginning.
Yeah.
So this was actually in downtown Palo Alto. So if you ever saw the Disney Pixar movie Up, you go down an alleyway and you'll find that little house, and that was being leased. Um, Wound up becoming their chief medical officer, brought the company, to Chicago, where there were a number of incentives for biotech companies, come to Illinois. Tim Walbert, our CEO, and I, based here in the Chicago area. And then really Horizon grew from literally a handful of individuals to 2,000 individuals with a worldwide footprint. And then were
Yeah.
acquired
Jeff, I wanted to
by
ask you
Amgen.
Amgen, yes. I wanted to ask you a little
Right.
bit about Horizon, if that's okay.
Sure.
What was it like being the chief medical officer of a company that went from so small to such a large company?
Well,
I mean, what was it?
yeah. So Antonio, Tim Walbert, the chairman, president, CEO of Horizon, and I had worked together uh, four different companies. First met at Searle, reconnected at a small biotech in the Chicago area, Neopharm, and then IDM Pharma, and then Horizon. A lot of learnings along the way. Um, one in particular is that, a lot of excitement in a biopharmaceutical company, uh, but, they may or may not have the resources of a large company, and a lot of what I would call one and done biopharmaceutical companies. I mean by that, great technology, but if there's a miss in a clinical study, may or may not have the wherewithal to stay in business.
Exactly. And is
Um,
that why you
and
think?
part of the,
Oh,
coming on to Horizon was, not wanting to be a one and done biotech. So that was getting a product approved, going public, getting a revenue stream, and really pivoting the company to a focus on rare diseases. And why rare diseases? As you're well aware, certainly estimates of anywhere of over 7,000 to 10,000 rare diseases. The challenge is only about 5% of treatments, and a lot of those are very lacking.
And Jeff, can
And
we talk about that for 1 second, actually? I
sure,
mean, so for a company like Amgen, who has, well over $161 billion net worth and just hit their 52-week high. I was looking up some of their stocks and everything and how they're doing in the market. You guys are doing really well in the market. Amgen's doing really, really well right now. When it comes to, but I always tie everything back to rare diseases, chronic diseases, and politics, socioeconomics, politics. I'm not going to ask you like, all I'm going to ask you is, was there pushback from Republicans or Democrats? And if so, which side was there most pushback from? And which side pioneered science forwards? If you could give your personal opinion on that.
well,
I know,
the thing, yeah, the thing with,
especially for rare diseases, Jeff.
right. What I would say is, um, interested across the board in terms of rare diseases because, diseases are what you could call equal opportunity employers. They're not going to say, are you a Democrat, Republican, independent? Uh, they, can affect anybody. So a big unmet need. And so, there have been bipartisan support for Orphan Drug Act. And look, yeah, I don't have to tell you, and I'm sure on your podcast, you've talked about unmet need in Huntington's, for instance. Um, look, patients with these rare diseases
We're just
would trade for anybody's worst day. So no matter how hassled somebody is or whatever, so real opportunity. Now, you know, there can be a lot of discussion on why more isn't being done to develop medicine in rare diseases. Pushing that aside, you know, Amgen, Horizon saw a real void, and Amgen shares that void with a what I would call patient first, attitude.
absolutely.
Look, at the end of the
I would
day,
agree. I would agree
you
with you.
know, we're all patients, regardless of whether somebody views they're in good health, not good health. It doesn't matter. We're all patients at the end of the day. Everyone has been touched, if it isn't directly, indirectly, friends, families, colleagues who've had some type of disease. And so a real unmet need.
And
Uh,
yeah,
and we all benefit from a healthy population. Go ahead,
amen.
Antonio.
Yeah, no, amen. That's actually what I wanted to hone in on is having a healthy society. There have been multiple studies that having a healthier society not only would boom the economy, it would boom innovation and ingenuity. It would get, you wouldn't have to worry about going to the doctor, taking a pill every day. You wouldn't have to go in the circle of being a patient. But Jeff, what I really wanted to ask you about is personally, a personal question that I would like answered. Why do pharmaceutical manufacturers normally only focus on the symptomology of a disease rather than a cure for that disease?
Well, a lot of this is really looking at, where is some of the low-hanging fruit, so to speak. Um,
How about
where are the technologic innovations? So, for instance, when you're really talking about a cure, and especially if you're dealing with a genetic or other disease, you're starting to talk about, gene therapy.
Yes, sir.
And then the question is, um, yeah, the technological advances or whatever in place, and really the knowledge of how to make this work in terms of, benefit with mitigating some, the risk as well.
So
So, I mean, some of that, I think we're seeing breakthroughs. Uh, are we there not? Are we there yet? Uh, and so in the meantime, you got to buy some time.
yeah.
So, in buying some time, it's, treatment management as more and more research is being done to really try to get to, what you're talking about, cures. Now, certainly there's some diseases that where there's gene therapy to manage that. There's others that are, you know,
Not gene.
technically much more challenging.
Yeah,
I
like
think
multiple
the
cancer.
one of the big breakthroughs. So, give you an example.
Yes, sir.
Um, so when I did my infectious diseases fellowship at UCSF, and I'm not looking to, date me, so to speak, in terms of time, but it was in the mid 80s. And HIV/AIDS was certainly almost a death sentence at that point. Patients getting opportunistic infections. When I first started my fellowship, there wasn't even a diagnostic test for HIV. Certainly during that changed when I went to work for Squibb, Bristol Myers Squibb. They were doing some of the, pioneering work along with, Burroughs Wellcome, GlaxoSmithKline in terms of therapeutics. And then you look now, HIV is becoming quote, more chronic manageable disease.
Yes, it has. God,
And, continued advances.
they have
Uh,
they have different medications that keep the HIV
right,
detectable, which is amazing and a great feat. And
right.
you're talking about the 80s, and now we're in the 2020s. That's 40 years of advancement. As a patient,
And it's still looking at how do you get to that, next step. And
yeah,
certainly it's not only just treatment, but even trying to prevent and mitigate, HIV infection in at-risk populations.
Jeff, I really
And then
want
you look at oncology, a big transformation in terms of, agents that may have been viewed as more cell poison, just, hitting, cancer cells more than healthy cells, but, side effects to now where there's more targeted therapies. So, again, to answer your question, the work's being done. It's yeah, unfortunately, with any disease, as you know, you can't just call a timeout. You can't just say timeout. Let's just wait until we have a cure, and hopefully everything will just stay the same.
so
The question is, when I look at,
I
disease
just put
state,
it in its terms, Jeff, what you just said for our viewers really quick. Can I just put it in layman's terms to see if I make sure that I got it understood? So you're saying that it's not that they're not working on a cure or towards a cure, is that these pharmaceutical companies are like, what are we doing now? What that we have the technology for that we know that we have. So we're focusing on the symptoms because we can.
right? It's when a situation arises, you have to look at. I look at it in three ways. One is, what can we do today with what we know? As a pediatric oncologist told me, you know, uh, the enemy of good is great. I mean, so it's can things be better? Absolutely. Is it a continuous improvement opportunity? Yes, indeed. Um, but the real question is really, in the absence today a cure, what do we really do? Because the way I look at it is, that patient, and you know this, more firsthand than a lot of people, that patient can be any one of us.
Yes, sir.
And that patient,
Absolutely.
just think of, you and what you've gone through. And the question is, okay, what can we do today? What can we do today to improve somebody's quality of life? Because that person could be me, my family, you know, a colleague. So it's really what can we do today?
Hold on.
What is it that we could focus on the next 3, 6, 9 months, year to make an advance?
So that was actually my next question, Jeff. You got ahead of me. You're good. Um, my next question actually was, which diseases right now, or for Amgen at least, are of a particular interest?
Well, so there
Types are there?
there's a couple of categories of diseases. I mean, there's certainly, there's genetic based diseases that you're all familiar with. There are, other diseases where, again, could be some underlying genetic basis, but, lifestyle issues that produce disease.
Okay.
So, you can just take a look at what Amgen has on the market, and certainly I'm not speaking for, the company here.
Yeah.
It's really looking at where are their unmet needs, where is the technology to really make an impact on those diseases.
And speaking,
And knowing a lot of this, is in the realm of biologics, not just small, pills in a bottle, so to speak.
and that's
So,
where we're transitioning to, especially with the advent of gene editing and CRISPR and brain surgeries, and eventually maybe be able to get it in CSF fluid through a needle. But I think that's what we're at the advent of right now. We're at like an inflection point of a new technological revolution, and I wanted to get your ideas and get your opinion on. You said the enemy of good is great. Is CRISPR great?
well, actually, the enemy of good is perfect, but, we're never going to be perfect,
Yeah, never gonna get there.
so to speak.
But what do you think about CRISPR gene editing, Jeff?
Again, that's where some of the advances are going to be made. And then, as you know, biologic systems aren't, necessarily simple. And
Mhm.
it's really getting a good understanding of, you know, of those systems.
But
Uh,
you think that it
and one thing that, and, Amgen just announced this the other day that Howard Chang, who has been at Stanford University and a lot of expertise in human genetics and disease biology, uh, is coming into the company in a chief scientific role.
oh
So
wow.
this gets to, your point. It's yeah, what can we do today? What is it that we can do over the next year or two? And then what are those things long term? Because, you hit it. You look at a number of disease states, uh, and just, the advances that have been made that made those disease states more manageable long term.
Yes.
So
I
not a
agree.
necessarily death sentence today, but so people can get their life back, so to speak.
Yeah, I just have always felt a disease like Huntington's disease, which we both know is a triple nucleotide repeat disease of the CAG repeat gene, which I've described in other videos. Anyway, with Huntington's, it's like Alzheimer's, ALS, and Parkinson's disease combined. Now, I know I focus on Huntington's disease a lot on this podcast because I personally have Huntington's disease because my father is dying of Huntington's disease, and because my grandmother and her mother died of Huntington's disease. However, Jeff, can you help this community a little bit, the rare disease and chronic disease community, provide more input and collaborate with pharmaceutical companies? How can we do that? Doing things like this, like getting on a podcast with a chief medical officer or an advisor? Is it things like calling Amgen and saying you're a patient? Like what is the best way, in your opinion, working in the pharmaceutical industries on the other side for a patient to get involved?
Well, look, certainly as an individual, you have a single voice. When you get multiple people together, you have a larger voice.
Absolutely.
And, one thing to look at, where have there been successes in making treatment advances? Okay. So rather than recreating the wheel, looking at what have been some practices. So, for instance, one group that I've been involved with, FDA initiated, or the government academia industry collaboration called the Clinical Trial Transformation Initiative, or CTTI.
Yes.
And one of the key initiatives was really looking at what are the best practices for, let's say, bringing together patients, individuals from industry and academia to tackle some of these issues. So they've actually worked together and published, and at the table at CTTI, you have FDA, you have individuals from industry, academia, and patient groups.
I've actually
And what?
I've been to one of those meetings, Jeff, and
they encourage, and everyone is at the table working on initiatives.
it is amazing. It is like you just said, it is an amazing feeling to have that mentality that it's not just you anymore. You're in a group of people who think this
Right.
similarly, who want to advance science, who want to advance disease management, and such a great meeting. I talked a lot about maybe making my suggestion was maybe having a doctor FDA website and then a patient FDA website. And that was my suggestion.
Well, and so a lot of it is, the threshold for a not-for-profit of being involved is very low, and everyone's sitting around the table looking to advance it. So that's one. The other is looking at what patient groups have had some success. Now, there's been many, certainly the cystic fibrosis community was very successful in partnering to bring together, new cutting edge medicines that have transformed, the whole management of cystic fibrosis.
That's horrible.
Individual I interacted with at Searle many years ago, Kathy Giusti. So, MBA from Harvard, really no ceiling for what she could do. Unfortunately, develops multiple myeloma.
Oh gosh. My grandmother.
Not a lot known, etc., but really galvanized her knowledge of what it takes to bring a medicine forward, commercialize that, forms the Multiple Myeloma Research Foundation. Kathy's, active, involved still, but it's, not only transformed how that's being treated, managed, but as well, she's still actively involved in a disease that, certainly prior to her getting involved, devastating, life shortening. Still not to the cure stage, but really making it so people are able to live a longer, productive life.
And
The
that's
other one I would mention, more getting into what you're talking about, neurologic diseases, Friedreich's ataxia.
yes. Yeah.
So terrible disease, uh, life shortening. Um, but if you look at what the Friedreich's Ataxia Research Alliance has done, and you go to their website, they're not waiting around for, let's say, companies or others to do things. You know, they're funding research initiatives that may be at a smaller stage. Um, and when you look at their website, they have what looks like a pipeline of targets and other things that they're supporting. So what they've done is galvanized the community, brought together individuals, and with a lot of this, it's you got to start somewhere.
That's what this whole
And
website
and and
is.
and it's, I'm looking outside right now, where I'm at in Deerfield, Illinois, and it's literally snowing right now.
It's snowing?
Yeah, so I don't know if you can see
No,
behind
can't
me.
even tell.
Well, so the reason is
Oh
it's
my
white
God.
up there.
That's
But the
awesome.
point is the following.
Yes,
You know, let's say you know, certainly where you live, snow is more of a rarity. Uh,
a little bit, yeah.
let's say you want to make a snowman or whatever. You start off something small and you have to build and build and build. You have to start somewhere.
Exactly.
And that's where, again, the enemy of good is perfect. You got to start. And it's a continuous improvement opportunity. So what I'm saying is that, let's say any group or a patient gets a devastating diagnosis, it's usually where can you turn?
Yes.
And in the rare disease area, there's certainly, as you know, there are patient-specific rare disease groups you can turn to. There are umbrella groups that you can turn to,
Okay.
whether it's a NORD, Global Genes, Urortis, for instance. And I'm not
Nord
giving any preference. I'm
and
just saying
no, and
it's
every life,
where can I turn to get some help because somebody's just gotten a devastating, diagnosis. And we met at a NORD FDA program.
yeah, that's where we met. And so I really do want to actually give them me personally, I would like to give NORD some credit, the National Organization for Rare Diseases. And I also would like to give the Every Life Foundation some credit because the Every
Right.
Life Foundation, they focus on every single disease. They don't discriminate. And Jeff, as we wind down here, I just wanted to ask you, is there anything that you would like to add that we did not hit on? Is there one thing that you
What I would say, Antonio, is get involved.
get
I
involved?
mean, if you really want to, people want to make a difference, get involved. There have been, technologic advances that make that a bit easier, such as the internet to do searches. Now, with that, there certainly comes the good, the bad, and indifferent. But
Mal
that,
information or
well, you can get to sites that may be helpful, may not be,
yeah.
but a lot of it is what I would say, listen and learn. And there's resources available.
Yes, sir.
Look, let's just look at, you know, you know, you've certainly been through a lot. Now, imagine if you knew 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years ago what you know now, you'd be better informed.
I would.
So the whole thing is get involved, listen and learn, uh, because the more informed
And take it
people can make better
right.
decisions.
and take action, right? Get involved, stay informed, and take action, right, Jeff?
And there's a number of resources that are available. So, I mean, for me, I'm involved in a number of, not-for-profits as
Inspiration.
well.
You really are. I want to end this
Um,
podcast by saying
it-
that, Jeff, you've
well,
inspired
you're
me.
very kind.
You really have inspired me to continue going on ever since we've met. I've been waiting for this podcast for the past 4 years now. I am so excited to finally
Hopefully, it's
have.
been worth the wait.
It was 100% worth the wait. I am so excited to have you on one of my podcasts. Hopefully, we can make another one when we both have time. But thank you for being on the Question Man show today, Dr. Jeff Sherman, everyone, and Antonio Maltese as your host. And everyone have a happy Thanksgiving and a Merry Christmas, and a blessed New Year. Thank you, everyone.
All right, take care.
Yeah.